the captions on as well? I guess you can turn them on for yourself, can't you?
But I think that Linda needs to do it first.
So go back into the 3 dots again.
Oh, look, it's working.
Oh, good.
Lovely.
Oh, cool.
So you can have the captions down the bottom too.
Oh, it's a different thing, is it?
That's a transcript.
Oh.
That's a transcript and caption.
Okay.
So
How do I
Linda,
do that?
down in the list, it says turn captions on,
That one?
and then everyone else, like the people who are coming in from online, you need to now turn your captions on so you can see the captions at the bottom of the screen. If you're not sure how to do that, just let us know and we can help you.
Sorry for the interruption.
So can I move on, or do I have to start this one?
No, don't stay again. Just say my bad way.
So which one are we pressing?
There should just be a left.
Okay. Functional impact. Physical impairment may have an impact on some or all activities to a greater or lesser extent. Physically accessing the learning environment, such as buildings, playgrounds, toilets, taps and furniture. So this is impacts that are occurring for a child with a physical impairment. There may be muscle tone, spasms, numbness and pain. It impacts on their gross motor, the fundamental movements, coordination and balance. Fine motor skills, they're grasping and manipulating objects. Posture, independent movements. So if a student is quite significant with, say, cerebral palsy, that independent moving of being able to pick up a cup or do certain activities, they will struggle with that movement and engaging in that activity. Performing basic life functions such as dressing, going to the toilet, having a drink of water out of a tap. And then you've got communications and speech, eating, motor planning and spatial awareness. What is observed? We'll break this down into what we look at, the gross motor side. They'll have difficulty negotiating playground equipment. So this is things that you might see of a student in your environment. So organising body position to move over, under and through equipment. It might be negotiating around in the classroom. They might trip over furniture. They might trip over other students. They look uncoordinated in their movement patterns. Accessing furniture and areas of the learning environment. So actually sitting down at a desk and positioning themselves at a table, or finding themselves to transition onto a floor or get themselves back up again. So that, looking at that accessing of furniture. They might trip over a lot or have lots of falls. They have poor posture, low tone and difficulty managing a seated position on the floor or on a chair. They may not engage with playground equipment because of their confidence of inability to do those movement patterns. Fine motor, you might see it in turning pages. Now, there's a fine line between where developmentally a child is at, for a lot of these things, and where they should be in relation to the rest of their peers. So they keep that in mind, because sometimes they can be slightly delayed in their acquiring the skills. So it's doing a lot of monitoring and observing of those students throughout a period of time to see, are they gaining the skills with practice, or is there something more underlying there? So there could be my impacts with drawing, gluing, cutting, puzzles, threading and pegging, reading, locating the correct place on a page and moving from left to right, crossing that midline, tying shoelaces, buttoning clothes, opening containers and packets. And there's a lot of other fine motor. They're just putting out a few. In self-care, dressing, can they put their shoes and socks on? Can they get their clothes on? And again, age, what is age appropriate? Where are they at? What is the expectation at that age level? And what are they doing that may indicate they are having some difficulties? Getting a drink from a bubble or a tap, can they turn the taps on? Using a drink bottle or cups, and then eating, is that, independence with finger foods and that sort of thing. Considerations and adjustments, it's all about access to all learning areas and activities. So looking at the environment, equipment and learning materials. So making sure that the child can engage with the tasks that you have or the activities that you have there, and making adjustments around that. And in your early years, you would have all seen that inclusive strategy planning adjustment. So looking at your timing, your scheduling, your setting, your presentations and responses. So they all can be adjusted, taking into consideration a student with a physical impairment. Okay, we're going to move on to vision impairment. We'll come back to questions at the end. We've got time for questions at the end. So vision impairment. What is vision impairment? It's the process of seeing. So vision is a perceptual process with three basic parts. So you've got your eye, the optic pathway, and the brain. And for vision to occur, all three of these processes must be functioning. What is vision impairment? A child may have a vision impairment if they experience difficulty seeing the distance or close up, and their vision cannot be corrected using glasses or treatment to within the normal vision range. A vision impairment can range from mild vision loss to blindness and may involve the eye or visual pathways or visual centre of the brain. Vision impairment can impact on a child's language, communication and social development, their mobility and movement skills and their learning. Reduced vision interferes with the gathering of information. At least 80% of knowledge about the world is gained through the sense of sight. So if we have a look at those pictures up there, you really can't get much from them because of they're blurred and they're distorted. So a child that has a vision impairment, that's what they're looking at. They're not getting much from their environment. Students with vision impairment may receive information that is limited, distorted or inaccurate. This has important implications for access and participation in the learning environment. Visual impairment can affect our clarity from what we saw before, fullness of field. So you might go from what we see, we can see our periphery, as opposed to some can only see from centre up, and they may have very tunnel vision, so they may not see what's out in the periphery. Eye teaming ability is the ability of the eyes to actually work together. So, and get that visual image to go through so they can make sense of what they're seeing. Contrast sensitivity abilities, that is, looking at things that have that significant contrast that builds out, that you can actually pick out what you're seeing. And interpretation ability is that when that message gets to the brain, what am I seeing? It's that interpreting of what, putting all the pieces together, and that can be impacted on. So your visual acuity here, so your first one on the left top is your normal vision. And as we go down to the bottom, you have a person who is 660. So what we would see at 60 metres, that's what they would see at 6 metres.
Oh gosh.
So, so distance, that's distant vision of 624. What we see at 24 metres, that's what they have to be at 6 metres to see the same picture with the same clarity of that. Okay. Similarly, again, this is your eye, for testing. So same again, what you're looking at, if you've got a 612, what we see at 12 metres with the, Z, S, C, L, N, K, AU, they have to be at 6 metres. So that impacts on your reading and what your close up work. Impacts of loss of vision. Vision impairment can impact on a child's language, communication, and social development, their mobility and movement skills and their learning, which we've said before. Limitation in range of experiences and environmental interactions. If they can't see what's there, they're limited in what they're getting from the environment. And it can affect incidental learning and social interactions. If they sort of can't see where their friends are out in the playground, they can't navigate themselves to their friends because they can't see. So your social interactions is impacted on. Signs and observations you can make in your classroom for identifying a student with a vision impairment. If they start doing close viewing of work, so if they're closer than that 10 to 15 centimetres, if they're really getting up and having a look, then you start thinking there's possibly something going on here. Squinting, closing one eye, involuntary movement of the eyes. You can see, some different movements of the eyes. Moving in closer to view TVs or screens, etc. With the movement of the eyes too, you can actually get, sometimes with that cross-eyedness or one eye turns in and the other one doesn't. There's that, we look for that. Looking at friends' work. So in a classroom, if they're constantly looking across to a friend, you might start thinking, oh, there's something not quite right here. It could be vision, or it could be other things that they're not quite sure of. Not writing on the lines, extra fatigue, difficulty locating objects, difficulty in bright lights, that's sunlight and in the classroom with some lights, with the glare. Difficulty viewing interactive whiteboards or information at a distance from more than 1 metre. More signs is bumping into things, tripping, clumsiness, knocking items off desks, disorientation. The child may complain that things appear blurred or words move about the page. Difficulty locating friends in the playground. Feeling with their feet when moving around or hesitating when there's a change in light perception on the ground or change of ground, from, you might have a footpath that has a step up and that they hesitate to actually take that step. Difficulty locating an object, their bags amongst other objects. Eye rubbing or continual blinking. Watery eyes. Reading errors, missing out words, difficulty with tracking, difficulty with moving from one line to another, and headaches. Considerations and adjustments. So this is just very concise around what you can look at. Each area goes a lot deeper. So you've got your contrast use. So looking at highlighting. So there's your black writing to your white background, or your yellow with black, so there's that contrast. Lighting in your classroom, the natural lighting that comes in, that could impact on them being able to see. So if a teacher's up the front and the light's coming in behind them, a student may not be able to see the teacher standing at the front. Sometimes your fluoro lights can be an issue, because when they come down on your tables, you can get glare as well, and even on reading some books. So there, your glare, where they're seated in the classroom or seated for certain activities, your time, the amount of time you have allowing them to move from one place to another, the time that you have allowing them to engage with the activities, the size of what they're doing. So if you're doing threading, you may not look at small things, you might look at large things for them for threading. Their visual responses, how do they respond in certain situations? Then looking at using low vision aids and equipment, and then the teaching strategies and environmental considerations, which is covered with some of those. Generic classroom adaptations. So you sit the student at the front of the classroom, or sit the student in the front when you're reading a book, so that they can access and see easy. Assist the student to find the optimal seating. So depending on the activity that you're doing, depends on where they might sit for best engagement in that activity. Decrease the clutter. So there's not things all over the place, and there's not so much for them to have to look at to find out what they're supposed to be doing. Verbalise what is on the board and with what you're doing. Use black, or it should be used black or blue pen, not green, red or purple, because black and blue are the easiest ones to see on an interactive whiteboard. Provide a slope board to assist with posture. Sit the student with light coming from behind or to the side to avoid that reflecting shadow and glare. Use high contrasting items. Provide a darker pencil, an HB or 2B. Put a bright reflective keyring on a student's bag so they can identify it easy. Provide a designated place at eye height for a student to store their bag and hat. And classroom organisation of furniture to stay consistent. So you pre-plan and prepare the student for environmental changes. If you're moving things around, let them know so that they're aware of it. And that's the same with seating in the classroom, you know, getting students to push their chairs in so there's not that chance of falling over and tripping into chairs. In teaching strategies, activities are age appropriate. Use daily routine to give a simulation of the vision. Consider generalisation of skills. Reduce that visual clutter. You know, so if you're in a classroom, in a prep class, when you're giving out colouring in or whatever it might be, don't have too much information on that. Reduce that so that they can actually see what they are needing to do as opposed to all the extraneous information that's not really needed. Consider vision fatigue. Watch for signs of vision fatigue, red eyes, rubbing eyes. We sometimes forget about fatigue, and if a student's got a vision impairment, they have to work very hard at seeing what they've got to see, and that creates that fatigue and that tiredness. Similar with the physical impairment, if they have that physical impairment, they're working extra hard to do any activity, physical activity, in and around. So there's that fatigue that comes in there as well. Encourage eye contact. That's in social skills. Verbalise. Activities using directional language and descriptive language. So if you have a child that has got a significant vision impairment, you're using a lot of descriptive language to give them, connect them to their environment that they're in. Provide verbal warnings. So say there's the student's name and then give the direction or what you want to happen. Encourage looking by using words such as look, find and see. Ensure all relevant staff are aware of the student's vision impairment and the related implications. Use of assistive tech. Reduce the number of steps or break down multi-step instructions and consider the size and shape of materials being used. I'm handing it over to Tracy. A lot of information, but it gives you a bit of a rundown there of PI and BI.
Thank you very much, Janelle. And if we have questions at the end, then we'll be able to see everybody.
Yes.
So it'll be a little bit easier. You'll see that there are a lot of similar strategies and adjustments that happen for the deaf and hard of hearing kids, as well as vision and physical impairment, just with some of the things that I was listening to for Janelle then. They're either very similar or they're the opposite. So in terms of what is hearing impairment, there are 3 different kinds of hearing impairment. Well, there's 2 kinds, sensory neural and conductive, and then the 3rd kind is a mixture of both. So sorry if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but when you look at the ear up there, you've got the pinna, or the ear itself is called the pinna. Then you've got the canal. Yep.
We should have a high
Oh. So then you have the canal going in here to the eardrum, and then this part in here is the middle ear, and there's 3 little bones in there called the ossicles, or you've probably heard them called the hammer, the anvil and the stapes. And then you've going from the middle ear, you've got the eustachian tube down here, which connects your the back of your nose and throat to your middle ear. So if you have a conductive hearing loss, the problem is somewhere in the outer or middle ear. Normally it's the middle ear with otitis media, ear infections, holes in the eardrum, something wrong with those little bones. Perhaps the fluid that has built up in there is stopping those bones from vibrating or eating away at them, perhaps. So when you have a conductive hearing loss, the sound is not being transmitted from the outside, effectively through the middle ear. And it can be that the sound quantity is reduced. So you're just hearing everything softer. On from the middle ear in here, this is the inner ear. So you've got the cochlea and the semicircular canals. They have a lot to do with balance. There's fluid inside the semicircular canals there, and depending on what's happening with that fluid tells you where you are in space. And there's fluid as well in the cochlea here. And lots of tiny little hairs, and those hairs are what respond to the sound and send the message through to the brain along the auditory nerve. And if you are born with a permanent hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss, it will be in that inner ear in here. And so some people might get a cochlear implant where they insert electrodes into the cochlea there to replace those hairs that are in there. And then the sound that they hear from that is very different. So if you have a sensory neural hearing loss, so the inner ear processes here aren't working, and it's not just the quantity of sound that's affected, it's also the quality. So the sound that you are hearing would be distorted. And then, like I said before, a mixed loss, you might have both of those. And so when you have kids come in school who have lots of ear infections, lots of snotty noses, you probably see that their hearing has been impacted by that, and they have what we call a conductive hearing loss. And some kids have a fluctuating conductive loss that for years and years, their hearing is fluctuating from normal to mild to moderate hearing loss, and ongoing, which has huge impacts, obviously, on their language. I just wanted to quickly show you an audiogram. If you do have a child in your setting who has a hearing loss, you'll end up seeing a report like this. And I just wanted to show you this part in here is where the speech banana or the speech spectrum is. And so depending on the level of hearing loss that they have, will impact on which of these sounds that they can or cannot hear. And you can see up here between 0 and 20 decibels, this is considered normal hearing. So anything below that will mean you have a hearing loss. So this person here, their hearing loss is going from mild, and down the side down here it's showing you mild, moderate, severe, and profound. So you can see that in the lower frequencies there's a mild loss, and it goes right down to moderately severe and back up to moderate. So anything above those lines is what they will not be hearing without their hearing aids on. So they might hear, without hearing aids, just these sounds here. The cross is for the left ear and the circle is for the right. And so if you fit hearing aids to them, perhaps then their hearing thresholds will be up here, and they will hear all of these sounds here, but perhaps not these high frequency sounds up here. And a hearing loss, an audiogram could look different depending on which, at each frequency where their hearing loss is.
And you can see at the 4,000 one, the difference between the left and the right ear, whereas the other ones are much more similar.
Yeah, and some kids might have normal hearing in their left ear and then a profound loss in the right. So there's many and varied different kinds of hearing loss that you would see on an audiogram like that. So if you do have someone with an audiogram, I'm happy to help, step you through what that means for them. These days, all newborns are screened to have their hearing tested, and that's done within the first couple of weeks of birth, either while they're still in hospital or they come back to have their hearing tested. This is a game changer for us because in the past, if a child had a mild hearing loss, you might not know until they got to grade 1 or preschool or something like that, because there's not much indication until that age. Or if they had a profound loss, you might know by 12 months or 18 months. Whereas now we know within 2 weeks of birth. And if they are needing a hearing aid, then that's fitted within a few weeks. So I'm working with students or babies who have their hearing diagnosed at only a few weeks of age, and we can work with the parents and get them into early intervention.
And that's the conductive.
It shows any kind of hearing loss. It'll
Oh.
show you whether it is, it'll tell you it's a permanent loss or it's a
Wow.
conductive loss.
That's amazing.
And, you know, some babies might just have lots of fluid in the ears, and after a few weeks that's cleared up and that's fine. But
Wow.
yeah, so it is amazing. And as it says at the bottom there, research shows that when a baby is born with a hearing loss, starting intervention before 6 months of age gives them the best chance in developing their communication and make sure they're not delayed.
Wow.
So yeah, wonderful that this happens now. So impact of hearing loss, any degree of hearing loss, even if it's just a mild loss in one ear in 2 frequencies, can have an impact on a child's ability to access their environment and reduced opportunities to learn, incidentally, acquire accurate speech and language patterns, access information and communicate effectively. And when we look at learning incidentally, most kids who have normal hearing, they learn most of language just by listening to those around them. It's just incidentally, it's not us teaching them something. They learn it by hearing it over and over. So having a hearing loss obviously has a big impact on that, which means it can have a significant impact on their listening, their speech and language, their learning and their social skills. And again, fatigue, as Janelle talked about, when you have a hearing loss, you have to put a lot of listening effort and cognitive resources into attending to what you're listening to, and that can be exhausting. And the things that make it hard are the poor acoustics in a room, lots of background noise, multiple people talking at once, and having to multitask. You know, in a class we might expect kids to be writing or doing something while they're listening to us, and that can be obviously very hard if you have a hearing loss. So this one is, instead of doing like giving you a hearing loss and making you listen to something as if you have a hearing loss, I thought I'd try this one. So if you just want to read that bit at the top. So we're only talking about a little hearing loss of 25 decibels. So if I take you, can you go back to the audiogram and we'll look where 25 is. So you can see, if you look at the numbers down the side, so 25 decibels. So you're missing some of those sounds there. Is t's not on there, but t would be the side k. And so if you're not hearing those sounds, or they're very close, they're like very quiet for you. Yeah. Okay, go back again. So see, most children with well-fitted hearing aids or cochlear implants hear no better than this from 2 meters. We're not watching you. And they may hear words in like a fragmented manner. So see if you can tell what that story is. Anyone brave enough to read it out, as it said?
Okay, I could do Once Upon a Time in a City. Someone else help me out?
Anyone worked it out? No?
Online people?
Someone went to visit an auntie, is it? Oh, country
yes.
meadow? Country meadow?
So
Oh, the city mouse is a country
Yes, it is.
mouse. Yeah.
once upon a time, a city mouse went to visit a country mouse. The country mouse lived in a field. He was, no, what was it? He was glad to see his city friend. The 2 mice ran about the field and played until noon. So just think about what effect that would have on your learning,
And
if
that's-
that's the kind of thing you're hearing.
That's with a good fitting.
That's right.
Yeah, that could be with the hearing aid or without.
Unreal.
Mine
so-
redo it. Can we keep a record? Just put it there.
Was that Sally?
I worked it out, but
You did?
it's very cool. And the student who did this, were they moderately, and what grade were they in when they wrote this?
Well, this is just taken from the book City Mouse, Country Mouse. Have you seen that book?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so it's all that the person who put this together, and I'll put the link there on the right. They just looked at what sounds would have been missing for somebody if they had a 25 dB loss. And so it's the sounds. So you can see that once upon a time a city mouse went, so that sound is missing there. So it's not what somebody wrote. It's as in it's not what a child wrote that they heard. It's an educator saying if we took out those sounds that they're not hearing, that's what they would be hearing.
Wow.
And then, you know, think about the concentration levels needed for that as well. And yeah, just the whole impact of that. So I've put down adjustments for early years setting because I thought that was the focus of the little ones one.
Yeah.
And these things will, you know, go across any age groups, obviously.
That's my bad.
No, that's fine. So of course the first one would be to make sure if they have hearing aids that they're wearing them. And that's not always as easy as it might sound because they might not want to wear them. And the younger they are, the harder it might be to keep them on them. But there's lots of little tricks, and I do have some handouts that I can give to Linda to post to email to you all as well. And one of them is about keeping hearing aids on for babies. And then a remote microphone, or we used to call them an FM system. If the child has one of those, make sure that that's being used, and looking at expectations, you know, are they meant to be wearing the hearing aids all day, which should be the case. But when are the times that you take it off? Is it when they're doing water play or when they're having a sleep, or when they go swimming? Looking at the batteries, where are the batteries kept? Making sure you have spare batteries on hand all the time, and then safety for those batteries. Making sure, because they're button batteries, make sure that you're disposing of them safely. Thinking about how you're going to explain to the peers about their hearing loss and their hearing aids so that it just becomes a normal part of them and the kids, you know, don't even notice anymore. But talking to the parents about how they want that done. If they have the remote microphone or FM, making sure you know how to mute it so that they're not listening to all the stuff that they don't need to listen to, because that just makes them even more fatigued, or that they're listening to confidential stuff.
All parents need one of those.
Yeah. Small group microphone mode. If you lie them down on the table, then anyone around the group they will hear, not just the teacher, but those around them. Making sure that you're monitoring the listening devices, you know, how often they're being worn and how their ear health is going, so that you have good records about that. Of course, making sure that the child can see your face, that's very important. So that in respects of that, you need to think about where you stand or sit, where they sit, how close they are to other noise, where the light source is, again, so that you've got a nice light on your face so that they can see you. It's not behind you so that you have a halo and they can't see your face. Thinking about divided attention. I think I mentioned that before about, you know, if the kids are having to do two things at once, if they're having to listen, it's too hard for them to be able to write, because as well as listening, they need to be watching you as well. So yeah, thinking about that when you're presenting in front of a classroom. Gaining their attention, again, saying their name at the beginning of the sentence rather than at the end, because by the time they've cued in that you're talking about them, they've missed the rest of it. Extra time for processing, speaking naturally but being expressive and using natural gestures, thinking about the language demands, you know, whether there's any new vocab or anything that you need to pre-teach, so that during the lesson they already have a good idea of what you're going to be talking about or understanding of that new vocab. Using visual cues, so obviously with younger kids you do that anyway. You're going to be using lots of objects and photos and pictures, drawing, video clips and visual timetables. Background noise, background noise is the enemy for hearing impaired kids. It just makes it so much harder for them. So reducing that when possible. It's not always possible. Another way you can reduce noise down the bottom down there, having acoustically treated environments. So just thinking about how much hard surface there is in your room. 50% of the hard surfaces should actually be covered with softer material if you're going to try and reduce the reverberation in the room and the sound from bouncing around too much. With younger kids, having a handout or a recording or something so that parents can sing songs and read stories, whatever, at home. So that, like I said before, kids have that knowledge beforehand, so you're pre-teaching them some stuff or consolidating what they have done during the day. Checking for understanding with open-ended questions instead of, did you hear me? Tell me what you need to do, so that you know that, because kids will just say, yes, I heard you, even if they didn't, because they don't want to bring attention to the fact that they haven't heard you. Whereas if you ask, yeah, tell me what you need to do next, that's a better way of finding out if they did hear you. Again, fatigue. So to try and avoid that high level fatigue, having some listening breaks or timing of auditory heavy content, so that it's, yeah, you've got a little bit of break, or if the beginning of the day is better for them, that's when you do that heavy listening. And remembering that group conversations can be difficult. By the time they focus, oh, it's Fiona talking now, and now someone else is talking, oh, they've missed half of what's said. So, you know, encouraging kids to speak one at a time, identifying who's speaking, repeating the answers. And if you have a sound field amplification system, which is a speaker and the teacher has one of those remote microphones in your classroom, then use it, because they are fabulous. These are things, I'm not going to read them all obviously, but if this child doesn't have a diagnosed hearing loss, but you're thinking there's something going on there, it could be any of those things that you might observe to show that, oh, let's have their hearing tested. And some of those physical identifiers would be kids who have otitis media or fluctuating conductive loss. In the top part up there, the speech identifiers, you can see if they have difficulty with those sounds of S, P, T, F, and sh, that perhaps there's a high frequency loss there, or if they're confusing some words that are similar, you know, they could be an indicator that, yeah, perhaps it might be a good idea to get their hearing tested. So, if you have a student who, or a child in your group who does have a disability diagnosis, a low incidence disability of physical, vision or hearing impairment, then make sure you have parent permission, and then you can contact Janelle and I to request our support, and we can step you through what the process is for that. And if you can, from the parents, obtain any copies of specialist reports, even the history, especially with a conductive hearing loss, not just the latest report, but, you know, whatever reports that they have to show that history.
And does that include our early childhood services as well? They're able to contact you,
yeah,
and our lovely Cath Ed friends.
Yeah. Cath Ed do also have somebody based in Mackay, Michelle Jensen, who is the person, I don't know what they call inclusion.
Oh, change it. The name's changed.
Yeah, and so she does support kids with the those three disabilities, but she will actually be the one who will contact us if she needs some additional support as well. And so if you suspect a student has a low incidence disability, then I would be making lots of observations and collecting data. And you might not do it in this order here, but these are some things that we would suggest. Discuss the findings with other people to see if they notice the same things. And of course, talk to the parents, refer for testing if it's appropriate, and contact us. Any questions?
I have questions.
So, yeah.
Okay, let's bring up our friends. Oh,
And thank you, Linda.
all right. Okay, who have we got? We have Sally and Simone. We have Sia. We have Eileen. How you doing there, Eileen? Is Samara with you? Oh, you're jumping all around the place.
Sorry.
A couple of questions
She's
in the chat.
Samara's not here. No, she's gone home
Oh,
with
no
her
worries.
kids.
Well,
Sorry.
it's great to have you. And there's Trudy and Tina. Anyone else I've missed? I had a few apologies coming through, Raylene, wouldn't make it. Anyway, who would like to start with questions? Tina, over to you. Lucky number one.
Hi everybody. This is just I love what Janelle said, but I was really more attuned to what Tracy was saying, because Tracy and I are actually meeting next week about a little person that actually has all this hearing impairment, and having all those additional things on that slides to look for, like even just right down to the runny nose.
Yes.
I really found that quite interesting, and I just, oh God, that's a really good checklist to kind of have. Does this child have this, 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 this? Is the child having speech difficulties, or is it because of their hearing? And obviously we all do this, I know, because we're fantastic teachers, is that we all encourage our parents to go and get their hearing and their vision checked. Now, for parents, it's actually quite easy for them to go and get their vision checked, but hearing is quite difficult, I believe, Tracy. Or do you know something that I don't, that I can tell parents, please?
There are a number of avenues for them. They can go to community health to have a screener. That's not done by an audiologist, it's by an audiometrist. But if they can get referred from community health, then they can go to Hearing Australia. So if the audiometrist finds that they do have a hearing loss, then they can go to Hearing Australia, where it's free to have their hearing tested.
Okay.
But they have to have been screened first.
Where is Hearing Australia in Gladstone?
Right in the centre here, near regional office, in the next little shopping centre where the ANZ Bank and Robin's Kitchens are. Yeah.
Is it the Palms?
The Palm Shopping Centre, that's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, but if they go there without any kind of referral or screener being done, it will cost them, I think it's $160 or something to have their hearing tested. And then, of course, there are private places as well, like a Tune Hearing, where they can have their hearing tested as well. Or if they're school age, you could be doing the Sound Scouts. Have you heard of Sound Scouts?
Yes.
Yeah, you could be doing Sound Scouts testing with them and if they fail, if they get referred on 2 of those, then they can also go to Hearing Australia to have their hearing tested.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
And when you mentioned about our little friend and, you know, that has a conductive hearing loss, and if they have lots of runny noses and lots of ear infections, a good way for teachers to help to combat that is to get them to blow their nose every day. And I know that's another thing for us teachers to do, but there's actually a program called the Blow, Breathe, Cough program, and you can Google that, and there's some great resources on there, and there's songs to go with it, there's colouring in things, there's lots of, I can send you some information about that as well. But that is a great thing. If you can do that once or twice a day with your young class, as they come in the room, they blow their nose, they sanitize their hands or wash their hands and into it. And with the Blow, Breathe, Cough program, you can make it even longer by getting them to do a little bit of exercise, you know, jumping up and down. Yeah, it's all on a website though.
I remember doing that in Toowoomba when I first started teaching. We'd be there getting all the 14-year-olds to blow their noses.
Yeah.
It's not fun. 14-year-olds, it's just not fun.
Thanks, Tina. Anybody else online before, and then I'll come back to you. You don't have to.
Oh yeah, this is Trudy here. Hey, I've just looked on the Ear Scout, so that's an app. Hey, I haven't heard about that before.
Sound Scouts, yeah.
Sound Scouts, right?
Yeah, it is.
So
It is an app. You need to just. Yeah, Sound Scouts is an app. You used to have to pay for it, but the government has made it free, so everyone can use it. But you just have to make sure that you really follow the instructions that they have. Get parent permission, of course. Have good quality headphones that they recommend, and then follow the protocols of the testing. Make sure that you're not talking to the student while they're trying to do it. That, you know, yeah.
Okay. No, that's very good, and I agree. Just those list of all those indicators was very good to see, and also to when you were comparing visually what someone can see at 24 meters compared to 6 meters and all that sort of thing. That was also very interesting to see.
Very. Thank you, Trudy.
I'll pop over to the room so you're not feeling neglected, but I will come back to you on line day tomorrow. Any questions? Well, I've been including myself.
Can I just jump in, Linda, and make a comment? So Catholic Ed girls, am I correct that every classroom in your schools has a sound field system?
Yeah, they're fabulous.
And see, that's just something that I think is so fabulous as a great initiative for our kids, not just our kids with hearing impairments, because we know best strategies work for all our kids. I just think that is so commendable that someone bit the bullet and said this is what we need for our kids in our classrooms. And yeah, it's just should be applauded. I think it's fabulous.
They are, and they're good for us as well.
They're good for teachers too.
Yeah. And when we're teaching phonemic awareness, it's particularly amazing.
Yeah.
So
Clear.
they're really in tune with the sound. It's so clear.
Yes.
So much clearer.
Yeah.
We are trying a roundabout way to get take up in our schools and trying to have a sound field system at meetings where principals or other people of importance gather to see for themselves how different it can be and how beneficial, so that maybe the penny will drop and they might expend some funds for because we know it works.
And any new building that Department of Education builds, you have the choice of what hearing augmentation that you have put into the room. But most schools don't know that they have to ask for option B, because option A, that is the default option, is not really usable for our students. So option B, everyone, if you're having a new building built or a classroom refurbished, but contact me and I can give you the right information about that too.
Wonderful.
And I have 2 sound field systems that I can lend out to people.
Does everyone, sorry Tracy, does everyone understand what a sound field system is?
No.
No, I don't know what it is either. No.
It's just a big speaker that you sit in the classroom. You can have attached to the wall or it can be portable. And then the teacher wears the remote microphone, which connects directly to that. And so wherever you're sitting in the classroom, the sound from that sound field speaker is the best sound quality that you can possibly get. So even if you're quite away from the teacher, within that room, the sound quality is great, the best you can get.
It also saves the teacher's voice as well, or a person who's delivering information, because they don't need to project, they just need to speak as they were speaking. If I was speaking to Janelle, my voice level would be quite low. That's the only limit of projection you need, because the speaker does the job for you. So it's really great for teachers as well.
And the kids, as soon as the teacher starts talking, they're aware that you're talking, and you get that more instant interaction. And
I need that in my house.
yes.
I've just got to remember to switch it off. I got caught talking about class lists in the playground. And there are other people in the room. So it's important to remember to switch. It's a Roger Red. Tell the kids Roger Red.
That mute button, there's a mute button on it with a big red flash when it's so that you know that,
Lovely. So that leads me nicely into my question. You mentioned about background noise as the enemy and that you should take steps. Could you share some of those easy steps that you can take?
Just thinking about if you have a classroom next door, working together to work out what if you can, if they're doing something that's really noisy, that you're doing something that doesn't involve lots of listening for your class, so that they're not trying to compete with that. That could be one easy thing. Thinking about the acoustics of your classroom, like I said, covering at least 50% of those hard surfaces.
So does it include things like posters,
pieces of fabric that you can pin things to. And I know that it can be a fine line of how far you go, because some of those things might set off other kids who have other kinds of disabilities, if they're overly sensitive to, lots of visual stuff and posters flapping or things like that. But if you can just think about covering the walls, covering the windows, curtains. If you've got a hard floor, making sure that your chairs don't have a hard bottom to them, that you've put some felt or some stoppers or something in the bottom of your chairs so that you're not getting that terrible screeching noise. Making sure your groundsman doesn't mow the lawn when you're teaching. That was happening in a classroom where I was just a couple of weeks ago. And I said, why is he mowing now? They said, because it's not break time. You can't be mowing out there when the kids are out there. I'm like, oh, wouldn't you do it maybe after school?
Morning when it's school. Can I just take that a step further? So we have, there is a resource for everybody, and I'm not sure if you know of Inclusion Ed, which has come from Autism CRC, and this is not about autism, but one of the modules in Inclusion Ed, it talks about checking out your classroom acoustics. So it's a training module. Melissa and I have asked Tracy to just check that out for quality assurance, I guess, because we've recommended it to other people and then sort of realised, oh, maybe it's, you know, I know Inclusion Ed's quality stuff, but it was just really nice to have it endorsed by Tracy with her expertise. So if you're interested in, there's some other great resources on that Inclusion Ed website, but if you're keen, I could send that link to Linda to share with you, just as seeing we're in the moment, and you know, Tracy has said that it's a great resource too.
Yeah, there's a great app that you can use to measure the acoustics in your classroom. It's called Listen App for Schools. Listen App, one word, for schools. And you can use that to test the reverberation levels in your classroom. So you put it in the iPad in the middle of the room. It only works on iPads, I think, not iPhones. And clap your hands and it'll tell how time it takes for the sound bouncing around the room, and the shorter the time, the better. And then it gives you some hints of what you can do. You also do a test of the classroom full with kids talking and see what the sound level is like, and they compare that to what is, you know, what's the word, like acceptable levels. Yeah, and there's a graph that you can use for that as well, and then you do it with the classroom quiet just to see what the ambient noise is as well. So yeah, that's a good app to use too.
So I do have one more question, sorry, and then I will come back to you online people, so get your questions ready. This may be controversial, but I'm wondering your thoughts on grommets.
Grommets, yeah. A grommet is there to get rid of that, or to drain out, not drain out, but allow air into the middle ear to reduce the fluid that's in there. And if an ENT thinks that grommets are great, you know, are needed, then yep, go for it. Some kids might have 10 or 12 sets of grommets in their life, and some might have none. But yeah, if the ENT thinks that they need one, then that's obviously the next step for them, that they need. Done.
Because I had heard a lot about children getting grommets and grommets, and then I've just recently heard that they're terrible and they do all this scarring and they would never use them, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
And I think you hear those stories about anything, you know, you have the extremes of, those that have had a bad time with them.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes, pros and cons with anything, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I am mindful of time, and I thank you all for your wonderful presence and participation. Does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions before we let these lovely ladies go? I will just let you know that I've asked them and they have kindly agreed to be available, because you might be like me and think of great ideas too late. So if that's the case. Oh, Tina, over to you.
I just want to see that one slide. I'm going back to that one slide again about all the signs to look for with the runny nose and all those other things. Are we able to get a copy of that just as a little list?
Linda will email you that presentation, and along with some other handouts as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, with that, so do contact me if you think of something later, and the ladies are available. But other than that, thank you so very much for sharing with us your time and expertise. And on behalf of everybody here and all of the children that it will benefit, we appreciate your time and your effort.
Thank you everyone, and thanks Linda for organising it.
Pleasure.
Yes, Linda, we should be applauding you
Well
for
done.
your amazing offerings to our community for our little ones throughout the year. It's been top quality, and your commitment and dedication has just been fabulous. So
Much
good job.
appreciated. And because you've been here for the session, I am going to I'm going to send you all an evaluation, not just for this session, but also for the series. So thank you for raising that. Just to find out, do you want me to do this again next year? And if so, same topics, different topics, all of that kind of great information. Oh, Crystal's not well still. No worries. So thank you. And you'll hear from me in email land. Goodbye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you. Oh, thank you to everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.